You are listening to the CADDle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentac Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CADDle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CADDle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentac Consultants. I am Jim, your host with the most, and with me is my partner in crime.
It's Rocco.
It's Rocco, the host with not the most. He's got the second most.
Yeah, you got the most of what?
Apparently the most fat is really all I'm guessing here. My ass seems to get bigger every day. Spend too much time sitting in this chair, brother. So, all right. So, you know what time it is, Rocco? It's that time again. It's time for the engineering joke of the week, brother. All right.
No.
Yeah, you got to have the joke. Got to have the joke. Strap in. Here we go. So this one's an easy one. So I have a question for you, Rocco. How do you get an engineer to do something that you want them to do?
How?
You tell them that's impossible. But I'm pumped. It is funny, though, because if you work with engineers, there is nothing that they hate more. You can see the little hamsters in their brain, like spinning on the wheels like they're on crack. When you tell them something can't be done, they're like, "No, it can!" It's like, I used to do it all the time. It was great. You're working with engineers, just tell them, "Oh, I don't think that can happen." And they just go, "Oh, yes, it can." And they'll just work like dogs. It's crazy. It's in their DNA. All right.
Find a way.
You find a way. There's no such thing as impossible to an engineer. All righty, folks. So let's get into today's topic. So, we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about software for the AEC world, right? What it does and where do you get it and better ways to use it and so on. And today I kind of want to change things up and talk about technical consulting projects. Though I am going to refer to it as service work. Instead, just because, constantly saying, technical consulting projects just takes too damn long. As many times I'm going to talk about it here in today's show. Plus, here at Zentac, right, we break our work down into three categories. We have sales, training, and what we call services, right? So that services label is what I'm going to use for today's discussion. When I'm talking about service work, I'm referring to projects that are focused on customizing your internal workflows and standards and templates and so on to really optimize how your people get their work done rather than just focusing on the software or the training of your staff, right? And look, service work, it's far and away the work mode, I guess, that gives our clients the highest return on investment. A well thought out and implemented way of improving your people's daily work can save tens of thousands of dollars every year for every one of your workers. And I'm not exaggerating on that number, right? So look, if you get a consultant in, someone like Zentac, to help you guys streamline your project management system, say, I'll be real conservative, right? And I'll say, hey, if you bring us in, we can save your project managers an hour a day off of whatever projects they're managing, right? An hour for each project. So, if you do the math on it, right, that's roughly like, 48 hours a year for every job. And if you got a PM who's handling 5 jobs, right, that's 240 hours, I think, times whatever their billing rate is. If we do that at like, $55 an hour, that's like $13,000 and change in savings, right, for every project manager that you have. And that's a substantial amount, but like I said, that's a really conservative number because honestly, when you're talking about a consulting job like this, right, one of these service projects, we're usually looking at saving as much as half of a person's billable time on most jobs, right? And think of the math on that. I ain't gonna do that, but it's like 4 or 5 times that, right, easily. And that I think that's why service work is such a vital tool in the AEC space. Particularly when you're short-staffed. All right? It really is. It's the only way to balance workload against profits. Right? Your people can only work so much, right? So many hours in a week, right? And making the process more efficient is the way that you get more done without working your people so hard and so long that they just up and quit on you. So, Rocco, right? And in terms of service work versus software versus training, how do the percentages work out for us, right? Do we see that they're like equal splits, or do you see more service work versus the other segments?
Um, service work is consistent, but I mean, our business is structured in a different way than a lot of businesses are. I mean, we see consistency with software sales, but services work, it tends to be a little bit more seasonal for us, depending upon what's going on. But it's still consistent. Um, so kind of bouncing around with my answer, but it's kind of a mix it's kind of all over the map. It's what I feel like we see.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Yeah, and like you said, I just think that, and you're absolutely right that service work is very often seasonal, right? Construction guys don't want to hear from us in the middle of summer when they're building, right? And the
Right.
architects and engineers don't want to talk to us, in January, February, March when they're like getting the projects ready for approval and delivery out for summer build. So yeah, it definitely switches up, throughout the year. So look, I think the types of service work that you need, right? It's gonna vary depending on if you're in the design or the build section of our world. And I want to talk about both industries and the areas that we see most often for service jobs here at Zentec. Look, as you can imagine, right, there are 1,000 different ways that every company works. So there is no 100% way to break this down. But generally we see really different needs for architects and engineers than we do for the construction and development folks. So we're going to start here with the design side, right? The most common workflows that we do a service job for in that design space, they tend to revolve very much around the design tools for each company, right? And see, even when we're not talking about software, it sneaks back into our show. I blame Rocco for that. It's his constant harping in my ear about sales. But look, our architects and engineers, they live and die with their CAD and BIM systems, right? Those are their primary design tools in this day and age. And so it's almost always the start point for them when it comes time to work on their internal efficiencies. But let's be honest, right? There is a limit to what any software can do, right? And there is a limit to how much training can impact the output of that software. All right, so even if you have the very best trained staff on the very fastest software, you're gonna hit a productivity wall, right? You're gonna need to look at automating processes and eliminating unnecessary steps and generally just simplifying the overall workflow if you want to start increasing efficiency and profits. And in the architecture engineering world, that's usually going to mean working with a consultant to develop, CAD and BIM templates that put, everything you need for your daily work right at your user's fingertips, right? It means parsing out your existing templates and prototypes, parsing them down to remove unnecessary items or overly complex steps that you guys have been working with. It really what it boils down to is it means that the phrase, quote unquote, that's how we've always done it. That phrase has to be taken out back and shot in the back of the skull. All right. And look, anybody who's going to insist on clinging to that attitude, we're not going to shoot them in the back of the skull. But they either have to change their minds real quickly or you need to have them start packing up their things, all right, and get them out of the building. So Rocco, when we talk with architecture and engineering clients, are they usually open to dramatically updating their processes, or do you find, kind of like I do when they get to me, that they're usually kind of very much creatures of habit who push back against change?
Yeah, it's slow go. I mean, it's logical, right? It's not a surprise, but the smaller the firm, sometimes the longer it takes to push those changes through. But it's slow and it's understandable, especially today, right? I mean, you've got, the industry's so busy, it's short-staffed, historically speaking, the industry as a whole is slow to adopt technology. So there's a lot of factors to be considered in the mix. But yeah, it takes time, and so.
Yeah.
But that's not always a bad thing, right? I mean, the last thing you want to do is, okay, just jump on this horse of technology. Now it's like, oh, why do we do that? That wasn't a good choice. And how do
That's a
we,
fair statement.
uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you're absolutely right that the smaller the firm is, the more they have to be concerned with it because you got limited personnel who are doing multiple jobs, right? Wearing many hats. And to throw, big changes at them can really disrupt your process. So it is a fair statement that, they have reasons why they can be slow that way. Um, but like I say, generally there really is a resistance in the design space to these service projects. And I also think it's because there's so much, advanced education behind the decision makers, right? And they have such high levels of responsibility as licensed professionals that there's, a fear of our optimization, right? Causing, vital steps to be missed in the process. And I actually think that that's why starting with like the CAD and the BIM systems is actually ideal, right? Because those workflows are often kind of, shrouded in mystery to a lot of your senior staff anyway. They don't really build it or work with it. And if there's something off in those systems, it's actually usually easy to identify visually, right? Either in the model or on the plans. You can see when something's not working. So it's a less threatening space to begin. And the return on investment shows really quickly, right? When you can see that, hey, your documentation it's going out a lot faster. It's a lot more accurate. We're getting, fewer RFIs, right? And I think the good news is that once you've engaged a consultant, right, whoever it is, right, to help you optimize those CAD and BIM features, and if that goes well, right, you're going to find it a lot easier to use those same consultants to start changing the bigger things, right, like document management processes and your internal communication flow and, your project review process, right, or anything else that might come to mind that's a sticking point within your company. Once you've got someone who you've worked with who has a proven track record of making things better for your company, you're going to have a much easier time, I think, convincing senior management that, changing, their tried and true methodology can be handled effectively and it can be tested and verified before you implement it company-wide, right? And I think that gives those licensed professionals a much greater sense of security when you're talking about, changing up things that at the end of the day, they're legally liable for. So, Rocco, do you see firms or do you see a difference in firms moving forward with service projects if there is a licensed architect or engineer who is involved with that process from the very beginning? And is it easier or harder to get a job going when you've already got the licensed professionals involved in that initial decision-making process?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a tough question to address, and maybe I should have a better answer for this. But at some level, I think it comes down to people and how difficult they are. I mean, you would think that the more layers you have involved, the more complex it is. But, I've been surprised to see environments where things flow very easily. And then it's like, all right, why is this taking 3 times longer? And it's because, oh, you've got this guy who's a roadblock to the whole
Yeah.
to the whole project, So it's I don't have a right or wrong answer. It varies.
Okay.
What do
Fair
you
enough.
think?
Fair enough. I mean, I do find, I think that when you've got those licensed people, and again, I think personalities are a big thing, right? Some folks are just very resistant to any kind of change, right? No matter what kind of licensure they hold. But I have found when I get into the actual tech side of this, right, on doing the actual work, that a lot of times, if you've got one licensed professional who is on board and supporting the change, the other licensed professionals tend to listen to him more than they will listen to, the CAD manager or the construction manager. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of, ego, I think, involved in that. And I think I find that it helps when I've got a champion who is, one of the senior staff like that. So, look, so folks, for design companies, right? Whatever you are, architect, engineer, anything else, getting a good set of CAD templates built, right, with your block libraries and layering systems and, automated file access and plotting tools and so on in place, it's going to take you a long way. Right? And for those of you who work in the BIM world, right, a template with, well-defined families, right? And I mean well-defined. I don't mean the crap that everybody downloads and shoved into the template from the interwebs. That's horrifying. It makes things so slow. Right? We're talking about, families that are clean and consistent with different levels of graphic display for different types of work and, consistent parameters across similar systems, right? That's the ultimate start point. Once you've gotten those things squared away, you can move on to, your document management system, right? And then onto, our communication control and workflow process. And then once you get those, and then you can involve your technical consultant in advanced design processes and management workflows. And I think it's important that you not try to pull a consultant, any consultant, not us, not anybody, into those advanced projects straight off. I think that's going to meet a brick wall from senior management, right? Because you're just coming in and saying, we're changing senior management's work, and that's where we're beginning. And I also think even if they're open to that, right, if it doesn't cause a problem, I think the cost is going to be crazy high, because the truth is they're going to have to go back and familiarize themselves with all of your CAD and BIM and design, those lower level workflow processes before they can even, do those advanced service projects anyway, right? So I think it's far better to just work with one consultant, right, who builds one service job with better standards on top of the other and the next, right? Just like building a building, you build from the ground up, right? You don't start at the top and work down. So with that, all right, so speaking of buildings, I'm going to use that as a segue to get us out of this half of the show by saying that we are going to be back in a little bit, and we're going to talk about the builders side of this world in the second half of the podcast. All right, so stand by, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody. Today's episode of the CADDle Call podcast is brought to you by Zentac Consultants. That's Rocco and I. We're bringing ourselves to you. Aren't we nice? So we wanted to talk to you guys today about some of the things that we offer at Zentac Consultants. In particular, we wanted to talk to you today about our offerings around developing and upgrading your CAD standards. We are here to help you guys with all of your CAD standard needs, from ongoing drafting and design support to block and library development, full CAD standards development, right, CAD version upgrades, really whatever it is that you guys need when it comes to developing, implementing, and tweaking your current CAD standards. Or like I said, if you don't have any yet, we can help you build them from scratch. So Rocco, why don't you tell all the good folks how they can reach out to us and start that conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, people, on our website, zentecconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK consultants.net. Or you can give us a call, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentecconsultants.net.
Ooh, nice. CAD standards from Zentac Consultants. You're listening to the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the CADDle Call podcast. We're talking about technical consulting services, right? And that service work today, and how it applies to the different sectors of the AEC world, right? And in this half of the podcast, I want to get into the builders and contractors and the methodologies that work best for them in terms of, dealing these service projects with a consultant, right? There are really three primary ways that, GCs and contractors and developers and so on tend to see real benefit from a consultant, right? It's in your estimating process, your project management, right? And in your as-built and submittal processes, I get that on the builder side of our world, it's very wide and it's very varied, right? So, a lot of this, like I said, it's also going to apply for developers and site owners and real estate investors. And, so keep an open mind as we talk, right? I'm going to kind of focus a little bit on the GCs and general building here, just because I do so much work with those guys and it's what I know best. But, let's start with the idea of the estimating process, right? Because it's the area that, again, has a lot of benefit to the firm, but it's also very easy to track the improvements and the ROI for those types of projects, right? If your jobs are being bid, quicker and more accurately, and you're winning more work, it's really easy to verify, right, that your tech consultant knows what they're doing and that they did a good job, right? So, Rocco, in terms of our entry as a consultant to construction clients, is estimating usually our main gateway? And is that where folks come to us, or do we tend to steer them there?
Um, a lot of people come in from the estimating side. Yeah. And I think it's, it's partially tied to what we're doing on a Bluebeam end, right? I mean, you're going to get into it a little bit more, but they're looking for ways to become more productive and more efficient. And Bluebeam in particular is a very, very affordable tool that allows them to be very productive on the estimating side, and it's pretty easy to learn. And so that's why I think we particularly see them coming from that entry point.
Yeah, that is fair. We do target that market really heavily. So yeah, look, the great thing about service work in the estimating process is that it is so customizable. And Rocco talked about Bluebeam, right? And there are a lot of really good tools out there, like Bluebeam, that are really solid, generic estimating tools right out of the box, right? They do fine. But when you engage with a consultant to configure those tools to your specific, work and needs, they become a much bigger part of your overall work process, right? And like I said, we do a ton of consulting on Bluebeam. So yeah, I'm going to use it as my example today, right? But in service jobs, it's more about, speeding the workflow than the software capabilities, right? It's about really optimizing how you work with these systems. And one of the things that I like to do with Bluebeam is I build custom tool sets, right? Where each contractor or each GC can, put together a common library of symbols, right? With associated data already in place for things like size and weight and cost and labor and anything else you can think of, right? So that their estimating staff gets to a basic, point and click mode to get the information that they need in the format that your company wants automatically, right? It's a very, very simple interface that has a traumatic impact on the estimating process. And then after that, right, we look at, the output and the reporting tools for the estimate, right? And some folks want, the custom info, everything built right into the, the PDF that you're taking off of the plans. It's all right there in front of them, which is fine, right? Others want to, integrate and automatically have that information be pushed directly to, they put together these really advanced Excel files, right? For, costing and so on. And maybe they want to, tie it right into that, and then they want to import it into a third-party system. And those types of automated processes save thousands of dollars on every single quote, right? And they can very easily, with those savings and the time, be the difference between you winning and losing work. So, Rocco, in terms of setting up custom estimating processes for clients, right? What's the feedback that you get, right? You talk to the clients more after the fact than I do. Is it as impactful on their processes as I think it is?
Yeah, it is for the ones who see the value in it. It can save them a ton of time. And again, we work small to large firms. I mean, there's people that say, well, I'll invest the time up front and figure out how to do it. And they, they long term, they see the huge value themselves. But there's a huge savings to be gained. And we can certainly help automate that process all around. Particularly like when it comes to building tool chests with Bluebeam on the takeoff and estimating side.
Okay. So, I guess the next type of service project that you're going to want to, look towards in the construction side of things is project management tools, right? Setup, configuration, and optimization of tools like, Procore or other project management systems. It's vital. Right? Look, over 80% of construction projects in the U.S. are both over budget and past schedule every year, right? 80%. That's a crazy number. And that can only be controlled by high quality project management systems that give your PMs and your supers the information that they need not when they need it, but before they even know they need it, right? Things that are going to warn them of stuff they didn't even know was happening. While most of these project management systems are really powerful and they give you just a remarkable amount of information, it's useless if it isn't structured and reported on in a way that meets how you guys run your projects. Look, right out of the box, and even with software developers giving you, and they tend to now, they give you a project contact, right? An in-house person is going to help you get going, to get started. It's not enough. I mean, these systems are just too big and they have to be too generic to appeal to a broad base of people. To be efficiency improvements for you without using a certified consultant to adjust all aspects of that system to your workflows. And I think that's really the big key where I think most, project management service projects fail. Right? Trying to change your workflows to meet the software's processes and not the other way around is a huge mistake. Right? Listen, optimizing doesn't mean necessarily eliminating or radically changing your work processes, right? Which is, all too often what the development support teams want you to do. Oh, you have to do it this way because that's how our software works. That's awful. A good consultant is going to adapt the software to work the way that you already work, right? That's step one of an efficient, project management system. Step two, right, is looking at optimizing your in-house processes once the software is giving your people what they need on a daily basis, right? Never let anybody talk you into changing what your staff has developed 20 years, putting in place and refining because they think their cool new software tool does it better. Trust me, it never does. The construction world will always need experienced project managers and supers and assistant supers and estimators making the decisions, right? We don't want that being made by the tech billionaires, no matter how many cool spaceships they launch into orbit. So Rocky, right? We're certified Procore consultants, right? So we do a lot of work configuring that particular system for our construction clients. What are the biggest areas in that system that they seem to need our help with?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to three areas. The first is training. Second is accounting, and then third is dashboard, development to really give folks an idea of status, on where projects stand. And I think we see that consistently across the board with whoever we engage and work with. And, obviously there's a lot of different accounting packages that people use out there, but, training is always a big part of a lot of what we do here at Zentac across multiple products, but particularly with Procore.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true, right? The idea that your project managers want to be able to just open up and have a dashboard or reporting panel in front of them where it shows them what's overdue, what's late, what's behind schedule, where there are problems, right? Which jobs are going, and then there's a whole array of tools for the financial folks in terms of analytics, right, and integrating with Power BI so we can see where are costs, which jobs are most profitable, what type of work do we get the most money out of. Those are the efficiencies, right, that help in the day-to-day operational decision-making processes without you having to do anything other than click on the job name. Here's everything you need to know in one spot. And those systems can't do it out of the box. It's got to be developed for you to show what you guys need. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So the last thing that I really kind of want to talk about here for service work in the construction world, it's tied to the project management system, right? It really is. But it's a relatively new, but I think really vital subset of that work, right? And it's called variance or QA/QC reporting. And it's the idea of not just watching the schedules and the costs on a dashboard in your projects, but a huge thing is ensuring that the physical construction, what's actually being built in the field, is being done according to the architect's and engineer's plan. In other words, right, we need to make sure that the floor slab is level, right, that the columns are, the right height, and the piping is in the right place, plus, a million other items, right, before they're, signed off on and paid out and the contractor is gone. And this is rapidly, I think, becoming the most vital part of the construction and project management service jobs that we deal with. Look, research numbers say that, like I said earlier, right, 80% of projects or over budget projects, right, happen every year. The other number that staggers me is that of those 80% of projects that are running over budget and over schedule, 65% of those costs come from improperly installed systems. Right? In other words, something gets done wrong today, and that is going to affect a dozen other systems at just ridiculous expenses over the life of your job. Right? So, if a beam it's a quarter of an inch off center, right? That doesn't seem like it's much, right? But when all of your roof trusses and the piping and the electrical, they either don't fit or they're hitting the beam, it's going to mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in change orders, right? And then waiting for, new materials or having to manually cut them, one by one, right? And all those things delay the project schedule, which means lost time, lost revenue, right? All those problems, right? All of those things are the biggest culprits for overruns, right? And the only way to stop them is to detect them early, right? And the best way to do that is working with a tech consultant who can handle regular, verification and inspection of your installed systems as part of one of these service jobs. And we do a lot of this at Zentac. We use a system called Solid Space, right? And we've talked about it on the show before. Where we will put scanning crews on your site after each key system installation, and then we process the scanned information against your design documents, right? And we can use both, 2D PDFs and 3D BIM models, whatever you have, and you get a variance report within 12 hours of the scan, right? And those reports are going to show you where everything is in the real world, right, with an accuracy of like a 16th of an inch. So full well that a system either works according to the design or it doesn't work overnight. You know it by the next morning. Right? And that gives you time to make your contractors resolve issues before they start impacting other systems. Right? It's far and away the most vital tool that I've seen for improving construction project efficiency in the last 30 years. So Rocker, here's what I will say, right? Solid Space, it's an amazing tool, right? And everybody who sees it loves it. But honestly, it has not translated to date, right, to a ton of actual project work for us yet, right? Not a lot of people are pulling that trigger yet. What do you think is holding people back? Is it their work schedules? Is it the time involved? Is it the cost? Or is there something else that's making them pause before putting what I see as like just an invaluable piece of the puzzle in place?
I just think it's technology, right? And construction, the construction field is our industry, like we said earlier, is just late to adopt technology. So I think people will get there. I mean, there's a lot of interest around Solid Space in particular. We're having discussions and starting to set up some pilot programs for folks. So it's just a matter of timing. And if you're listening to us now, we're let's say midsummer. So it's not particularly the best time for a lot of folks, but folks are starting to be more in tune with it. So it's tech. It's tech, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, you got to build that level of trust. That's fair. All right, folks. So to wrap it up for today, I think there's a vital need in all aspects, of the AEC community to get involved with a tech consultant who can help you with this, service type of work. And some can, be done in-house, right? Sure. But the people you task to do this work in-house almost always also have to be billable, right? And then you run up against, individual personalities in the company, and then they have their own personal issues with change. Whereas, consultants are neutral, right? We only care about being effective, right? Because if we're not effective, you're not going to give me any more work, right? A good consultant who will start with, a small job and build up the scope of improvement for you across multiple projects. I think that those guys are worth their weight in gold. Now, look, I'm not saying you have to call Zentac, all right? But I will say that if you're listening to this podcast, run by two silly old bull guys, it's probably because you trust us to give you honest information on the industry, and I promise we will do the same for you with your internal work processes. All right? So with that, folks, we're going to get out of here, and we will catch you next time on the CADDle Call podcast. All right, everybody, today's CADDle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentac Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentac Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentac strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentac?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentacconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentacconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.